Well, good morning and welcome to CBN News Live Desk. My name is Dan Andros, managing editor here at CBN News, and joined today by head writer for the Glenn Beck program and former DoD intelligence analyst Jason Buttrill. Jason, thanks for being here, my friend.
Andros, thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. So we are going to talk about this Trump video that's been, it's made a ton of headlines today. And this is classic President Trump, right? Like, he just has a way of just igniting these sorts of debates. And so if you're not sure what happened here, we all know about his comments recently on Gaza and how he wants to, rebuild Gaza and make it into a flourishing place. And everyone's wondering how that's going to work and everything else. So he made those comments recently. Well, then yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, he posted, and I can't even really describe it, but he posted this video on Instagram. Take a look at this.
Tunnels coming to set you free, bringing the light for all to see. No more tunnels, no more fear. Trump Gaza is finally here. Trump Gaza shining bright, golden future, a brand new light. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump Gaza #1. Trump Gaza shining bright, golden future, a brand new light. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump Gaza #1.
Now I have that stuck in my head, Dan.
I know.
The rest of the day.
It's a catchy little tune. I don't know who made that thing, but so Trump, President Trump posts this thing, and of course, everybody's saying, and of course, as Christians, you look at it and there's a giant gold Trump statue and you're kind of thinking like, okay, what is going on here? And so what is the point of this? Is there a point to this, Jason? Help me understand, well, other than him just being silly. And one thing about President Trump is he absolutely does not care what Washington elites, what congressmen, what senators, what they think about him. So he has fun with this sort of thing. So Is he just trolling, or is there any kind of strategy here going on?
I tell you what, Dan, the past couple months, for people that have studied geopolitics, that have studied foreign policy, going back to post World War II, have been some of the most exciting months in recent memory. And this video, as I'm watching now, as they're making it rain there on the beach, have been some of the most exciting that I can imagine. Why? Because we've been screaming for new ideas. And this is not about politics, although even on the political side, they're trying new things and people are freaking out. But they're trying new things in the world of geopolitics that have never been attempted before. And it's always been about, maintaining the status quo or adhering to a treaty from the 1970s or 60s or something like that. And I believe that this is, even though the detractors will say this is a troll, I think this is much more than a troll. And I think, there's been this thing that no one wants to talk about. It's almost like Voldemort. You cannot name what's really going on in the Middle East with Israel. And for one, surrounding the Gulf nations, is that every one of the Gulf nations secretly in private pat Israel on the back. That's what they do, because every single one of those Gulf nations, well, most of them, have had to deal with the Palestinians in some way, and it's backfired on them. They'll go to Jordan, and then instantly, you'll have a civil war and revolution break out in Jordan, and they try to assassinate the king. That happened. Then they get taken from Jordan because, they're starting revolutions and terror attacks, and then they're taken to places like Lebanon. Well, then a civil war breaks out in Lebanon. Lebanon has never been the same. And don't even get started with how Egypt thinks with the Palestinians dealing with the Muslim Brotherhood and the multiple coup attempts that they've had over there because of this issue. Hamas is a Muslim Brotherhood affiliated terror organization. That's what they are. So Egypt doesn't want to deal with them. Nobody in the Middle East wants to deal with them. What Trump is doing right now is he's getting rid of that secret. He's saying the secrets are over. If you want to be a player in what happens in Gaza going forward, you have to declare out in the open that you actually support what Israel is trying to do. You care about the people in Gaza, but you now have to make it more than just a public statement to your own people. You have to take ownership of what is happening to the people in Gaza. Now, this, I mean, if you look at what the, this historical significance of things like, the Abraham Accords, you look at nations like the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, Sudan, the only 4 that have actually signed the Abraham Accords. There's no reason why countries like Egypt or Jordan, besides the fact that they want to maintain this little secret, can't now get involved and say, look, we have got to do something because we know that our people don't want Donald Trump, the United States, to be the main face of the rebuilding of Gaza. We have, countries like the UAE that is responsible for Doha. We could have people like they're responsible for Doha build a larger Doha in Gaza. They can be in charge of the reconstruction. I'm sure the United States would have some kind of, economic benefit from this as well with, U.S. contractors. But that would be a side thing. But now they can also police the area with Israeli support because they're members of the Abraham Accords. This, I believe, not a troll, but a push to bring all of that out in the open and see a development and, dare I say, peace for the first time in decades. It's an amazing outside the box idea.
Yeah, I mean, and when you look at that area, right, like you said, like other nations have not been forced to be brought to the table on this. And like, this is kind of, Jason, like what we see from President Trump. It's just the way, I think people often have a misunderstanding. Like, yes, he's all about the trolling and yes, he's about doing that stuff, but he's very much, and CBN's David Brody talks about this all the time. The way he operates is sort of the art of the deal mentality. He looks at himself as a deal maker. So you can't look at what's happening and the things he does as run-of-the-mill foreign diplomacy, right? Because he doesn't do it that way. I mean, it's the same thing like we talked about last week, Jason, with Ukraine and Russia. He's not going to go, let's all talk and let's get together and you guys, talk about what you want and you talk. That's not how he's doing it at all. I mean, this goes back to his days in New York when he threatened to build, over a dispute. He was like, I'm going to build the ugliest building ever if you don't do this. Like, this is just what he does. And so, I mean, imagine the people there in that region, like thinking of the prospect of Donald Trump building like his Trump Taj Mahal or whatever he ends up building there in Gaza. Like, they have to be terrified of that. And the thing about President Trump is he has the history that he could do it. He's a guy that actually could do it. So the threat is real. Like if Joe Biden tried something like this, like saying, hey, I'm going to go, like no one would believe it. Absolutely no one would believe it. But it's a credible threat here. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but I would think that people, the people in that area, Palestinians especially, are like not thrilled. Like the bearded dancers there, you just saw that there, like they're not, I mean, we all know how everyone, it's kind of a joke now with the whole, the LGBTQIA people for Palestine. And it's like everyone's saying, well, who wants to tell them? You know what it's kind of like there for the LGBT crowd in Gaza, right? It's not exactly favorable. So showing things like that, like the bearded belly dancers, like that's a huge offense in that culture, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, probably in public, but I mean, if you go to places like Doha, you're going to see some some almost similar things.
Right.
I think that it's interesting that you bring up, our conversation about Russia and Ukraine last week, and that's a perfect example of the out of the box thinking, the new ideas. People were freaking out about the minerals deal, and kind of making fun of it before. Well, now it's looking like it's going to get signed. But what actually happened after that occurred? You then had Putin publicly running to the table and saying, well, I got millions of supplies of aluminum. Like, what about us? Like, whoa, that would not have happened before. Absolutely would not have happened before. But what is that? Not only is Trump's approach towards Ukraine and Russia a little bit different, but it's bringing this transactional geopolitical play back to the forefront. Now, before, it wasn't transactional at all. It was do this because we're the most moral people in the world. Just trust us on that. Meanwhile, they're toppling governments and, funding sterilization projects in South America. USAID was doing that. It was a no one trusted us on these things anymore. Something Trump is doing not only in Russia and Ukraine, in their foreign policy there, but also in the Middle East. Look, they're saying, look, we're not hiding anything. We're not hiding anything. You know, we're all, the United States is a corporation. We're a business. The United States is open for business. We will help facilitate business in any way we can. We're not hiding the fact that we might benefit from that. But I think that Donald Trump does not want to be the sole person responsible. This is a very key point. Does not want to be the sole person responsible for creating this area in Gaza. I think this is a play to push Arab nations, the Gulf nations, into that role. Now, this has some ramifications that could backfire on us. I think the majority of Americans don't want us to be involved in something like that. It could go very, very badly. I mean, the last time a large U.S. presence went to the Middle East, it inspired al-Qaeda. So this could backfire on us royally. And he might be pressured into continuing with what he said. I hope that's not the case, and I think the majority of Americans hope that is not the case. But I think that if this negotiation continues and it's successful, it has the potential to bring forth a new reality as far as Israel's relationship with the Middle East going forward. And that is incredibly exciting.
Well, and I think, you look at what's the main problem there, and it's that terrorists were running Gaza, right? Like, so
yeah.
Prosperity is always going to be one of the keys. Excuse me. One of the keys to trying to revitalize an area, right? Like, so, I mean, billions of dollars had been sent to Gaza over the years and all this aid, and it ends up being sort of like the old SNL skit, with Bill Clinton, and the funds are going to Somalia and it's intercepted by pirates, It's essentially what's happening there. You send the funds over there and the terrorists get it. And so, but yeah, it is. I mean, there's a lot to this video. There's people in the comments, by the way, Jason. I just wanted to mention we got people kind of joining in as we go here. And a lot of them are commenting on the golden statue part of this. And, I think as Christians, I think it would make a lot of us uncomfortable. Like, regardless of what you think of the strategy, right? The strategy you laid out, like trying to bring them to the table and trying to move it. Like, the imagery of Trump, a big golden idol of Trump is kind of like, we all know the story from scripture of Moses going up on the mountain and then, Aaron can't deal with all the people panicking down on the bottom, and then they immediately start fashioning golden calves. So like you have that imagery of the golden calf. So what do we make of all that? I mean, are we just supposed to sort of accept the trolling there? I know that's not on the foreign policy side of things. I'm kind of going down a different road, but what do you make of that part of it?
Well, I agree. I do not like the imagery. For one. For two, there is no golden statue of Trump going up in Gaza, regardless of who takes control. This was clearly an AI generation where a few interns were like, create this video, blah, blah, blah. And that's one of the things that popped up. The imagery is disappointing. And, but I mean, it kind of feeds into the threat of Gulf nations do this. Otherwise, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
It feeds into that threat. But that's what Donald Trump, foreign policy is really all about. You look back in, 2017 when he was starting to deal with North Korea, you started to see a pattern of, we're not going to get involved in foreign wars, but we will have the threat, an overwhelming threat in some way, to force you into action. The threat for North Korea was, I believe at one time there was 4 aircraft battle group, carrier battle groups that were moving into the region. That amount had never happened before, and North Korea promptly said, "Hey, let's meet at the DMZ." This happened multiple other times in the Trump administration, but that is the Trump doctrine: is to have the threat of something so overwhelming, and in this case, overwhelming to their psyche, that they cannot allow to go forward. Whether it's making it rain like that, which is obviously not going to happen on the beaches of Gaza, or that tower, that statue right there, which is obviously not going in. I do not like the imagery. I do not, and I agree with that. But that is not going to happen.
Yeah. All right. So I just want to acknowledge a couple of people in here. Seth saying that it reminds him of a low-budget end times movie. So another one there says, Pepper, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to read that name. I don't know what it says. Trump didn't make this video, but the fact that he reposted it says volumes. But And there's more in there. Anyway, go ahead and drop your comments, your questions in there. We'll try to answer them. We'll try to react to them. And also just let us know where you're watching from. We like to see you here, and we like that you're here with us. And also like the video, because that'll help CBN get into the algorithms and all that fun stuff. If you just hit that like button, there's several hundred of you on here, and we need more likes on that. So go ahead and hit that. Do your part. Tell us where you're from. We'd love to hear that, all that good stuff there in the chat. So I appreciate you all being here. Jason, let's talk a little bit about America First, because you kind of talked about the threat that's out there of possible involvement, but that's, according to the sort of America First sort of agenda that's in doctrine that's been emerging. That's kind of the principle behind Ukraine and Russia, which is we just want to end this thing. We don't want wars. We don't want to just be endlessly funding Ukraine and supporting all these foreign wars that are going on. How do you square that one with the Gaza situation? Because obviously, if you're going to, let's just say it plays out and, it ends up having to be him because nobody else is taking the bait and they're not going to go for it. How would you square that with an America First sort of agenda that doesn't want, because we know that if you put any American presence there, whether it's officials, whether it's some security force or something, we know that terrorists are going to go after them, right? Like that's almost a given. So help me make sense of that. How does that all work, or does it?
Well, America First is it's kind of funny that it's criticized in some circles, because America First used to just be a very, very, leading strategy for every country in geopolitics. It has replaced America with Romania or Poland or whatever. And what that means is that our foreign policy will be directed by our own nation's interests. Now, post-World War II, that all upended. That ended when we decided that we were going to rise to the level of superpower, that we were going to shift our strategy to we have the most divine, system, which we did have the most closest to perfect system at the time, but it was in defining, an evil regime and communism. Well, we took that too far. There was an old guard of foreign policy people like the Zbigniew Brzezinskis, people like that wanted to push NATO and, as far as it could go, that wanted to contain the Soviet Union because we were righteous in this cause. Well, partly true. NATO did do an amazing job on that. I believe that we were, I won't say righteous, but more on the righteous side of it. I believe that we were the good system. We still are. And we were battling an evil regime in communism. But I think they took that too far. And then we after the Cold War ended, we stopped being a nation that was guided by national interests, be that economic or security, and more towards pushing out our morality onto the rest of the world. That's not America First. Whether you look in the Middle East, whether you look in Eastern Europe, whatever, that gets us into, you use that mentality, you can get into every single conflict in every single corner of the world, nonstop, 24/7, every single day of the week, of the year. That's not sustainable. And that's not what we're all about. Now, when you're looking at America First towards the Middle East, what are our goals there? Well, for one, maintaining Israeli strength is a very, very big one. Not only because they're a democracy in the Middle East, not only because our shared Christian and Judeo history that we empathize with them, but for me, you know me, Dana, I connect very, very strongly to that. But because it's in our security interest to not let terrorists run wild all over the Middle East and then attack us in another 9/11 type of attack. Now, who is more aligned in our interest to support? Is it Israel, or is it Qatar, or is it Saudi Arabia? That just makes no sense. That makes absolutely no sense. So helping Israel to figure out their situation, their main immediate threats, which is Gaza, which is the border with Syria, which is Hezbollah in Lebanon. I'm not saying getting directly involved, but supporting them in their mission to secure their borders and be able to strike when they have to is tantamount. It's paramount. It's exactly what they need to do.
Yeah, and I think what happens in the America First sort of conversation on this foreign policy stuff is a lot of people end up taking it to this zero-sum game where it's like you can't send one penny to any place overseas. And it's like, well, I don't know that that's good. To your point about we have to have interest. Like, you can't live in a vacuum and just assume, like, if we just duck and cover here in America, that everything's going to be okay and that we don't have any interest. I think, to your point, I think perhaps, it's taking a look at the way we've been doing it for decades and decades and decades, and have we extended that too far? And it's almost a similar idea to Doge, right? It's like, okay, where is this big, massive, bloated government kind of taken this idea and gone too far with it? Now, not that you can't ever have any help anywhere, anytime. Like, I think America, you can make an America first argument for intervening or helping somewhere, because it will affect us and it will impact us. I mean, we're living in a day and age where everything is digital. I mean, you can't just say, well, we got oceans between us now, so we're all good to go. Those days are over. So all that to say is I think reasonable people can say, yes, there are times where you have to do some things outside of your borders. It's not a zero-sum game. Do you get that same sense? Do you see those arguments out there, Jason, where just basically it's anytime we do anything for anyone, it's a complete shut it down. That's not America first.
Sure. And I think people are right to have that opinion because of how everything has progressed, over the past, 50 years, really. I think people are right to be skeptical and to analyze these things. Look, we're going to have to take a long, hard look as Americans, individually, doing your own homework and asking yourself some serious questions on what you believe here. Do you believe that, do you believe the post-Cold War era is over? If you do, then you're actually in the minority as far as the foreign policy elite, because they never stopped. Then you need to ask yourself, do you think that the way that they've been handling the world, based off the fact that they don't think that post era ever ended, that it's still continuous, do you think that they did a good job in managing the Middle East? I would say a resounding no. After 20 plus years of war, nothing really changing, things getting worse, I would say no. What about the Ukraine situation, which is absolutely awful? Hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians dead. I mean, I don't know what the body count is now. Russians dead. Other nations being threatened. Do you agree with how this foreign policy elite has handled Eastern Europe? I would say no, because if they did it a different way, then this never would have happened. So now we have to look at alternative ways. What's going on right now in the Trump administration, at least, is something different. At least it's something that it's not the way the old guard has handled things. Now, it could be a disaster. I don't know. It could not work at all, but it could be a huge success. And I am very, very interested to see how both regions end up working out in the future. I think it's a bright time, at least because we have new thinkers trying new things. It's kind of cool.
All right, I'm joined here by Jason Buttrill, head writer and researcher over at The Blaze, former DOD intelligence analyst. And we're talking about this video that Trump posted that stirred a lot of controversy. And it's essentially, we played it earlier, so if you missed that, you can go check that out. But it basically shows Trump Gaza, right? And it's this kind of kitschy video here. You can see the roll of it going on in the background, and it shows, war-torn Gaza, and then they're walking through a tunnel, then come back on the other side, and it's essentially been completely remade. You got a happy Elon Musk there, bearded men belly dancers. That's a odd situation
AI
going
glitch
on there.
That one, yeah.
AI glitch, and yeah, that is the one thing. So yeah, Elon Musk again eating food. Then the Trump golden statue, which I've been watching people in the comments. A lot of people not, and Jason said the same as well. We're not fans of the imagery there, but curious. And we've kind of been talking about this whole video. If you missed it, you can go back and check out the beginning, talking about like how much of this is trolling versus he's just making a point and he wants to kind of move the needle. And we were talking about it, Jason. I mean, it's the art of the deal. For Trump, where this is closer to getting people to the table than I think. I mean, regardless of what you think of the strategy here, you have nations like Egypt, you have, these neighboring countries over there finally going, okay, we better do something or else, we might be getting giant statues or whatever, Trump Plaza in Gaza here. And or even just honestly for them, I would think just the idea of American presence there probably terrifies a lot of those Middle Eastern countries there on the corner. And so it's kind of forced them to come to the table.
Yeah, and it's important to be able to separate the ridiculous versus what we know, treaties that have been struck and things that are already in place. Ridiculous is the statue, Elon Musk making it rain, eating guacamole on the beach.
Right.
Those are the ridiculous things. The things that are real, the things that I believe that they're hinting at and nudging at are things that have been the groundwork that was laid out in the first Trump administration. Think about the Abraham Accords. Think about who is part of the Abraham Accords. The biggest one of all, the UAE. Think about cities like Doha. Think about what they could do. I mean, they love to engineer cities. This is the perfect area for them to engineer. Then think about the other three: Bahrain, Morocco, Sudan. Then think about the other Gulf nations. Why aren't they involved? This video is one of those steps, I believe, that will help push nations like Egypt, probably not Qatar, but others in the region to finally go, okay, we need to be a part of the Abraham Accords. We need to be more of allies with Israel than antagonistic. And we're going to start selling this to our people that it's going to be better.
A lot of this, the propaganda videos coming from Hamas, where they, with the hostages, right? And we've seen that. And you see the people in Gaza there, right? And they're cheering, they're celebrating. And everyone's like, oh, look at all these people there. Now, I have a question for you about that, because you're talking about them making the case here to try to convince people in Gaza, I guess, and Palestinians at large, that this is a better, like getting this economic development, getting these other nations involved is better for them in the long run than what they have. And so there's two things I think about when I see those people in the crowd. Sorry about that. In the crowd cheering. One is they're doing it because they're terrified that, I mean, you see Hamas, they're going to, if you don't go along with this, they're sitting that, I mean, you see Hamas, they're going to, if you don't go along with this, they're sitting there armed. They're going to drag you out into a back alley and kill you if you make any sort of stink about it. So there's that. But then we also see polling numbers where a high number of Palestinians do support Hamas. I mean, they voted for him in there, right? So like, when you see those videos, which side of it do you think is more plausible? Do you think it's just they're lining up in fear and they actually want a better life? Or are they actually loving that and cheering because they've been indoctrinated and brainwashed?
You're bringing up some hard questions and some very hard things that we need to look at when dealing with the people that, I don't like calling them Palestinians, the people that reside in Gaza, Israeli territory that they're calling Gaza. I feel for the people there as I would feel for all humanity all over the world. But these people that have grown up there, especially under Hamas, they went to grade school with textbooks in their elementary classes of people killing Jews. They've been given machine guns and told them that it's the greatest honor for them to die killing a Jew. These are some of the people that, and I'm not saying every single one of them has been indoctrinated into this, but a large amount of them have been indoctrinated on this. What do you do with that? I think, personally, I think that what happened to the Japanese in World War II is a very, very good example. I'm not saying to drop nuclear weapons on Gaza, obviously.
Right.
But destroying the Japanese empire and emperor completely, embarrassing them, completely dismantling them, occupying them, and showing them that this is over. No ifs, ands, or buts. This is over. Completely changed the Japanese mindset. They stopped believing. I mean, before they would fly suicide missions, into ships because the emperor told them to. When they knew that they had been defeated utterly. Hamas has to be defeated 100% utterly. I cringe every single time I see 1,000 Hamas soldiers get released for about 2 Israelis. Dan,
it's brutal.
I cannot, I'm telling you, that is not defeating them utterly. I want Israel to go in, completely destroy every single Hamas hideout structure, arrest every single Hamas terrorist, or kill them. That's what I want to see. And I think that the entire population will see that the jig is up, it's over, and then they can start moving ahead on a different, more peaceful ideology. But Hamas has to be dismantled. I was in Israel for the anniversary of October 7th. And we had a meeting with the intelligence directorate, through Mossad. And they showed us a lot of the things that they're not showing the public as far as some of the videos, including some virtual reality walkthroughs. It was horrific. And anyone that has seen this or even heard about it, you will have those same feelings. This has got to be done absolute 100%. You cannot give Hamas an inch. And I hope that's the eventual goal. I do not want to see any kind of peace deal with Hamas.
Yeah. No, and you bring up a good point. We should do, Jason, when we talk again, we should do maybe a deep dive on these prisoner exchanges, because it is frustrating. I understand that Israel, values life and wants to get these hostages back, and they're just doing whatever they can to make that happen. But I mean, Yahya Sinwar was one of the ones that was released in an earlier, one back in the day when they had these earlier prison swap, and then he ends up being one of the leaders here in Gaza. I think he was the one that was killed on the drone video. You could see that one, right? Was that the guy sitting up on the upstairs? So, So, but he went. Point is, you're releasing these people, and the numbers is what really makes me go, why are they getting hundreds of them for just a couple of hostages? And we could do a whole nother segment on that, Jason, because I mean, to me, it's like, yes, get the hostages home, but it so incentivizes them to continue to do this, does it not?
It does, but yeah, there's a huge. It's very, very hard politically for the Israeli government to handle this. And if you've been in Israel since the October 7th attack, you've seen the massive, as they should, outcry from the Israeli people to bring them home now, which is, the slogan that's everywhere. It's lit up on buildings. There's signs everywhere that say "Bring them home now," and at this point, I think that's the majority of their feeling. Every single person, Israel's a small place. Every single citizen, in some way, has a connection to October 7th. It's very hard for us to even imagine, because, I mean, we have, 350 million people in this country. Mm-hmm. Most of us probably know someone that has a connection to 9/11 in some way. Well, every single one of them has a deep family connection to this, extremely personal. And so taking this long to get all the hostages back is not acceptable to the Israeli people. So I see the problem with the government. They're having, they're working through, how do we get the hostages back? Do whatever we have to do. I'm assuming, if that means letting 1,000 Hamas soldiers go free. But I do not think that. I think this is a very different, era and situation than before. I don't think that even if those 1,000 guys are going free, we get 5 hostages back, I don't think those 1,000 Hamas soldiers will be alive too much longer. At least I hope not. I don't.
Yeah, I know. I've seen enough of those videos from the sky, right, where you got the camera. Like, I mean, maybe they're tracking them on their way out. I don't know. But I mean, Israel's come up with some pretty ingenious sort of ways to, with the Grim Beeper operation and all the rest. So, Jason, I know you got to go, but I appreciate you popping by and breaking all this down. If you missed the full explanation of, or at least analyzing the Trump video that dropped here with the golden statues and everything, just check back the video once we've uploaded this video and the live is done. Go back and look and check out Jason's explanation for this, and appreciate you all being here in the chat. Definitely appreciate that and your questions. Sorry if we couldn't get to them all, but Jason with the Blaze, DOD, former DOD intelligence analyst, head writer researcher over at the Blaze. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
All right, let's do it again. All right, God bless you all in the chat. God bless you all watching, and stay tuned to CBN News for more. We've got our team in Israel constantly having updates there, so make sure you're on cbnnews.com, checking out all the very latest there. So God bless. We'll see you next time.